Now, the dynamic between these two turned out to be great entertainment. And it all started with Dricus' comments about Africa.
Obviously, this time last year, 3 African champions. That has obviously changed. Does it bum you out? There's not as much gold potentially going back the next time they go? Or do you see this as an opportunity? Now you do get to be the guy.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand. I'm going to take a belt to Africa. I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron, we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa, we're African born, we're African raised. We still reside in Africa, we train out of Africa. That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be.
Dricus would later go on to say that he was only ever talking about residency.
Do one of them reside in Africa? I did not even mention this towards them. I didn't talk about them, I talked about myself. I was not aiming anything at them. I was aiming something at myself, that I will be the first champion that resides in Africa, that will take his belt home to Africa.
And this is the real genius of his comments. Yes, Dricus was talking about residency, but he was using residency to imply that made him a better or truer representative of Africa. Now, Dricus later denied this part.
I never said they weren't African or I was more African. Of course they're African. And I respect them a whole lot. I mean, Usman is one of the greatest to ever do it. Adesanya is one of the greatest middleweights to ever walk this earth. I never took anything away from them in that aspect. The only thing I said is that I'm still residing in Africa and I will bring my belt back home to Africa.
But as I said, this is what made his comments so clever and provocative. Just listen to his comments.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand.
Did these belts ever go to Africa? They went to America and New Zealand. So he is talking about residency there. But then he continued with, I am the African fighter in the UFC.
I'm the African fighter in the UFC.
The is the definite article. It's singular. And by definition, excludes the 3 kings. Then he includes his teammate Cameron, who also resides in Africa.
Myself and Cameron.
He then clarifies that his comment is about residency.
We breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa, we're African born, we're African raised. We still reside in Africa, we train out of Africa.
But he finishes this soundbite by saying, that's an African champion, and that's who I'll be.
That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be.
So again, it sounds like he's defined an African champion in a way that clearly excludes the 3 kings. Now, Dricus would repeatedly claim that he never said he was more African or that they weren't real Africans. And he also claimed that he was only ever talking about residency.
Which is my home, where I reside. If we are sending out postcodes and addresses, mine's got to be in Africa. And that's the facts of the matter. I never said they were not African or I was more African. I only stated that I want to be and will be the first residing African champion.
But what he's admitting is that while he was talking about residency, he strongly implied that residency is a critical aspect of being an African fighter or an African champion. This is the trap that he laid for Israel. And I mean, depending on how you look at it, it's absolutely defensible. Like, is Dricus more African than Francis Ngannou? No, Francis left Africa as an adult. But is he a truer representative of African MMA? Of course. There's only one fighter in the UFC who truly represents the pinnacle of MMA in Africa, who is a product of African MMA, and that is unquestionably Dricus. So he could have easily leaned into that. He could have just said, look, these guys are African, I'm not denying that, but they do not represent African MMA. There's only one championship caliber fighter in the UFC who represents African MMA, and that is me. And there's really no way anybody could ever argue with that.
Did he ever train in Nigeria? Did he train in Africa? No, he didn't. Do I train in Africa? Yes, I do.
But Dricus chose to lean in a residency to defend his comment.
Simply saying that I want to make history for being the first African residing champion.
Now, I don't think he planned the whole thing out. I just think he instinctively knew that this was an advantageous button to press, and it could not have worked out any better, because there's a direct through line from his comments here to Israel crying in a press conference 17 months later. It all comes back to this. In this clip, Dricus dropped a bomb in Israel's lap, and Israel could have diffused it. He almost did, but instead he fucked around with it, and the whole thing blew up in his face. So let's take a look at that. Dricus made his comment revolving around residency, but implied that made him like a truer representative of Africa. But one thing Dricus did not do was make it about race. There is nothing about race in anything Dricus said. Like, I'm sure Dricus is completely aware of the dynamics of a white man framing himself as a truer African, but he himself didn't make it about race. But he set a very clear trap, and Israel fell face first into that trap. Here were Israel's first comments. Israel is always talking about movies, and you could tell he had recently seen the movie Troy.
I want to whoop his ass so bad. I want to whoop his ass so bad. I want to do it in South Africa or Nigeria so I can whoop that ass and I can show you history. Because you got to choose your words wisely when you speak on people that have come before you. You want to try and be a big boy. You want to bamba. You want you with the big boys. I pray to God he keeps winning. I will gladly drag his carcass across South Africa. Wallahi.
Elaborating on his views, Israel almost hit a home run. He almost nailed it because he almost took the high road and said he'd never question Dricus' Africanness. It was almost like he wouldn't lower himself to that.
On my side. Nah, I'll tell you one thing. Okay, you know what? What I actually really don't like, I'm gonna take him to school. In the octagon and on history, because what he's doing is creating divide. You can't, knowing your history. I've never questioned him as an African, because yeah, you were born in Africa, South Africa. Of course, you're an African. I've never questioned that.
I'm sure all Israel's fans were watching that clip thinking, perfect, you nailed it. Take the high road, don't lower yourself. Do not utter another syllable. You fucking nailed it.
But who the fuck is this cracker to tell me who the fuck I am?
Well, you certainly fucked that up. And this was the critical fumbling of the bomb Dricus dropped in his lap. In one sentence, he goes from knocking it out of the park to completely dropping the ball and fucking the whole thing up. There's a lot of disdain in how he drops that racial slur.
But who the fuck is this cracker to tell me who the fuck I am?
So just to quickly summarize things again, because this is the whole thing in a nutshell. Dricus made comments about residency and did imply that made him a truer representative of Africa. He didn't touch the subject of race, but he laid a clear trap for Israel. And Israel walked right into it. He took the bait, he made it all about race, and that's how things proceeded. Israel was non-stop making it all about race.
As a product of colonization, you're trying to tell me who the fuck I am. You can take the boy out of Africa, but you can never take the Africa out of the boy. I never ever did that to him. I never discredited him as an African. But the fact that as a fucking cracker to tell me who the fuck I am, that pissed me off. And that's why he's my next fight. But now you be careful what you wish for. You got what you want. So yeah, he's next, and I'm gonna fucking beat him till he's black. I never questioned his ethnicity. I never said he's not African, even though colonization, we don't want to go over there and all that stuff. Yeah, he is an African because he was born in South Africa. How the fuck are you gonna question me, Francis, and Kamaru's blackness, our Africanness? Like, who the fuck are you? So I had to put that out there and just, I want to educate him. I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
You ever heard of Ancestry in Me?
Of course.
If you do Ancestry in Me on me, I know where the fuck I'm from. If you do it on him, he'll find out where the fuck he's from. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't say South Africa.
This is my African brother right here. Let's go. What's up? Let's go. Yeah, my African brother. What's up?
I'm African, but I ain't no brother of yours, son.
And this allowed Dricus to take the high road. He was able to look down on Israel with disgust at him trying to inject race at every turn and act like he'd never do that, which, to be fair, he didn't.
He's behaving like a clown in there. You know, that's not how a champion behaves. That's not how a man behaves. He's behaving like a child. Conduct yourself like a champion. There's people looking up to you and you're behaving like that? Nah. You know, if that sells tickets, good for him. I'll sell tickets my way. I'm a gentleman, I'm a man, and I'll behave like a man.
And obviously his comments, he's taking a lot of criticism for what he was
And
shouting on the
rightfully
mic.
so. You are an example to people all over the world. One of the biggest stars in sports, not only in this sport, in sports.
Yeah.
Doing something going with racial slurs, which does not belong in sports.
Yeah.
It does not belong, well, it doesn't belong in the world, in my opinion. This sport is so amazing and it's given so many people so much things. Bringing race, color with racial slurs, all of that stuff into it, immediately made me like, I don't want to be a part of this. And that's why I just walked away. Because I'm not going to engage in that, because that is not the example I want to set for people. That is not what my message to anybody in the world is.
Just amazing to see, he just set Israel up. And Israel just wandered into the whole thing, just tossing around racial slurs with disdain and talking about fucking colonialism. And Dricus can just take the high road. You make me sick. There's no place for that kind of thing in sports. Oh my God. So Dricus gave Israel enough rope, and Israel just ran his popularity into the ground. The whole thing played out perfectly for Dricus. But of course, the fight got derailed. Strickland interjected, and so the fight got delayed until now. But they picked up exactly where they left off. Israel is making it sound like he arrived on a beach in New Zealand in a dinghy.
Dricus is saying, I train in Africa, I do this in Africa, and then people like Razak and myself who are forced to flee our own country because of, a better opportunity.
But these guys are kind of talking across each other to an extent. I feel like there was some clever sleight of hand from Dricus that has really confused things. Like, he's committing to the residency angle, but has always denied that he ever implied it was a question of being more African.
And as far as discrediting, never discredited anybody. Stating facts. Where do I reside? What's my postal code? Where do I train? Where do I live? Where was I born? In South Africa. Still there, still training. And I won this belt from South Africa. I didn't travel anywhere else. That was the only thing that I stated. So never discredited anybody.
I don't really give a fuck where he's from, but I'll show him who he is.
Yeah, whatever that means. I'm glad you took up golf, because, that's a retirement sport. I can understand you start playing golf.
It just feels like Israel has always known there's something not quite right about that. Like, he's always had a sense, correctly, that Dricus did make it about being more African.
He tried to discredit the Three Kings and say that he's the real true African champion. Like, it's a weird mindset, bro. Like, he came in the UFC, I knew who it was a little bit, but I didn't go, oh, who the fuck's this fake dude coming in? I just said, cool, he's another African in the UFC. But then him discrediting me, Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, that ticked me off a little bit. So that's what started this, but again, I'll finish it.
But Israel foolishly made that about race, which it never was. And he has continued to do so.
He can't even, he'll never understand that because he lives behind the fucking gates of his privileged life in South Africa. And I wonder where he got that from. What kind of mindset is that? Like, oh, I see this and I want to offer myself. What kind of mindset is that? What kind of mindset is it that you see 3 African champions and you're going to be the 4th one? You could have said, it'd be a great honor to be the legends of African champions that have been in the UFC. He tries to say, take it all for himself. That's a colonialist mindset. He doesn't understand the error of his ways. But I will show him the way.
And so it all just seemed to play out so perfectly for Dricus until it finally culminated in Israel being reduced to tears at the press conference.
On Tuesday, I'm going back to Nigeria. I think Friday, I'm going to South Africa. And then the next week, I'm going back to New Zealand. I am a child of the earth. I'm a child of the earth. And when I take this bet, I'm taking it everywhere with me.
Are you taking the servants with you? Have you going back?
What the fuck are you even on about?
Bro,
shut the fuck up. You don't even know anything about my story. You have no idea who the fuck I am.
I don't care about your story. I don't care about your story.
Listen, my father and myself had to wake up at 4 a.m. and clean the banks while my mom studies to be a nurse. You don't know my fucking story.
I don't care.
I will show you who you are Sunday. So right now, shut the fuck up.
I can't wait.
Back by lesson. You see. You did. You did. You couldn't even respect the people of. Shut up, pink fit.
You can't change the facts, but you can't change those facts.
He touched the subject there because I do this for my family. I do this for the people I love, and I'll fight for you forever. I swear to God. Watch this. Look, I'm a fucking human being. I am a man. I can cry and whoop your ass at the same time. I feel the love from the crowd. First time I fought here, 2-2-1. That was February 2018. That was me making my dream come true. Sunday, I'm gonna fucking kill your dreams, bitch. I wanna fucking kill your dreams.
And so, if there was a mental battle, Dricus kind of won that. He set a trap, and to his detriment, Israel wandered in. In the court of public opinion, the whole subject of Africa was a battleground on which Israel absolutely lost. But the war for Africa is far from over, and it actually just became much more interesting and significant. Dana White just revealed that should Dricus win, the UFC will go to South Africa.
Big fight. You know, every time guys hate each other like this, you know, the fight usually ends up sucking. But I have a really good feeling this one won't. You know, you're talking about, you know, if you look at what Israel Adesanya has achieved in his life, not just here, but in kickboxing too. And Dricus, he brings it, man. He comes and you have one of these situations where both guys, everything is on the line, especially because they dislike each other so much. And if he can beat Izzy and bring that belt back to South Africa, obviously, we'll do an event there. And if Izzy can retain and win the title, it's huge for him and his legacy.
So Dricus will be the first fighter to bring the UFC to Africa. It all hinges on him. That will be a historic event, and Dricus will be the face of it, if he wins. All of this other talk about Africa has been interesting. It's been very compelling. It's been fun to watch. But Dricus taking the UFC to Africa would be a huge win for him. But Israel still has the chance to intervene. He can pop that bubble. He can stop the whole thing.
Sunday, I'm gonna fucking kill your dreams, bitch. I wanna fucking kill your dreams.
So that's now one huge aspect of what's at stake. The mental warfare was great, but the most meaningful part of the war for Africa is still on the table. These guys fight for money, they fight for pride, they fight for belts, they represent their family, but it just seems incredibly fitting when you consider the buildup that Dana put Africa on the line. A massive event in Africa hangs in the balance. It's all there to play for, and Israel can spoil that for Dricus. So there is a lot on the line here, and I can't wait to fucking see it.